It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Oh, because I don't tell his story, I tell history. Now, to answer your question, Mr. Nelson, because I know what you're alluding to, you're basically alluding to the vote scam. I came on your show in 1992. I crack up because last week George Norrie on Coast to Coast had a guest on, and they were bragging about how for the last 14 years they've been talking about election fraud and voter fraud. Well, actually, they didn't even say election fraud. They said voter fraud. And I'm cracking up. I'm like, okay, let's see, 14 years. That would be, okay, 19. No, that's 2002. Well, gee, Mr. Nelson, you and I were talking about election fraud and voter fraud in 1992, so I was doing it 24 years ago. So how the hell can George Norrie and his guests brag about being the first ones on radio show talking about voter fraud? And I came on to show you because 1992 was an election year. President Bush, of course, the daddy Bush, was running for re-election. And I came on your show and started telling you folks how politics really works. And I told you folks whoever has the most royal blood will win. I came on your show and told your listeners how Daddy Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot were not only related by blood, but their families come from the same small town in England. The next day, what does the L.A. Times print? Oh, Bill Clinton has more royal blood. Blah, duh. And then, of course, when Bill Clinton ran against Bob Dole, I came back and told you all the same thing. Bob Dole could not be president. He lost most of his right hand in World War II, unfortunately, which means he can't shake hands with world leaders, which is a sign of weakness. And Bill Clinton had more royal blood than Bob Dole. So I challenge your listeners out there. You don't think Bill Clinton's wife, Hillary, is related to Donald Trump? Oh, you guys are idiots. But in 1992, Mr. Nelson, something else that I talked about was vote scam. I didn't use that term at the time, but I said we don't really have voter fraud. We have election fraud. There's very little voter fraud. But as Stalin once said, it matters not how they count their vote. It matters not how they cast their vote. All that matters is how it's been counted. And that's what you got going on in this country. So when Donald Trump came out with they're rigging the election, folks, that's a projection. When you hear Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, guys like Donald Trump use the word they, replace the word with we. And so, Mr. Nelson, when I came on your show, you had a lot of listeners call me paranoid, conspiratorial. That same year, brothers, Charles Collier, Kenneth Collier came out with the book called Vote Scam. So it's kind of ironic because you know who kind of passed away last week very quietly? Nobody talked about it? Janet Reno. And Janet Reno was the state attorney general for Florida when the Collier brothers brought that book out. They brought all the evidence to her about the elections being rigged in Florida, and her answer was, you're absolutely correct. However, statute of limitations is up. We're not going to do anything about it. And that's why I was very enraged when Bill Clinton later on selected Janet Reno for attorney general. As far as attorney generals go, the only person I despise more as attorney general in my lifetime was Ed Meese. So I love it when guys like right-wing Mark Levin come on talking his crap about how Eric Holder and, Loretta Lynch is so corrupt. I have no love for those boule folks, but trust me, Mark Levin, he was the speechwriter for Ed Meese. Ed Meese was the most corrupt attorney general. By the way, Reagan years. So, Donald Trump, they come up comparing Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan. For you people too young to remember, and for the rest of you too dumb to choose to remember, most of the people in Reagan's first administration were either indicted, resigned in lieu of, or got fired because of scandals before his first term was up. Same thing's going to happen with Donald Trump, by the way, because I already see the people he's surrounding himself with. They're all criminals. Seriously. So while they're sitting here talking this crap about voting to get the established Republicans out of office, they're lying to you because they just put all the established Republicans back in office who are now controlling the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. There's no significant change in policy, just like Carol Quigley said. So to answer your question, Mr. Nelson, I will just say this. In every election long before my time on this planet, there has been election fraud. Always has been. And now with the computers, and now that the League of Women Voters are not even involved with it anymore, it's a lot easier. Now, what state, Mr. Nelson, Theoretically, no Republican becomes president without winning this state. What state is that, Mr. Nelson?
Ohio.
And who owns the voting machines in Ohio? Mitt Romney's son. I'm sorry, folks. Come on the radio and say I'm lying to you. So while Alex Jones will talk his crap about Soros owns the voting, they are lying to you. They own the damn voting machines that are controlling this election. They've already gotten much of the laws that were bled for, died for by black folks and white folks during the Civil Rights Movement. They got laws that were taken off the books by the U.S. Supreme Court, Republican-led Supreme Court, that took those laws off the books down in Mississippi, making it easier for them to restrict blacks from voting or to intimidate blacks from voting this year. But they didn't really need that, because who did the Democratic Party pick? Hillary Clinton. And there are enough black folks as myself out there who would never vote for Hillary Clinton. So we either had a choice: vote for somebody else other than Hillary Clinton or not vote at all. So while you folks are patting yourselves on the back because Donald Trump has supposedly got elected and those are crying because Hillary didn't, let me remind you, 46.9% of all eligible voters in this country did not vote because they're fed up with the system. And as myself, I stopped voting for the lesser of two evils in 1992. So I hope that